I'm Larry TABB, founder and CEO of TABB Group. I'm here with Adam Sussman, Director of Research at TABB Group, and our discussion today is really going to be about too big to fail. One of the big issues coming out of the financial crisis has been the issue of too big to fail. That these large organizations are so interconnected, mostly through derivatives contracts and other over-the-counter transactions, that when one of the parties goes down, it cascades to all the other parties. And there's been a whole lot of work done at trying to migrate transactions to exchanges, trying to limit these banks. But in the end, what we've seen over the last 2 years, that instead of the banks getting larger or smaller, they've actually gotten larger as Bear Stearns got absorbed by JPMC. We had Bank of America, take over Merrill Lynch. We've had Wells Fargo take over Wachovia, and so forth and so on. So I guess the issue of too big to fail, Adam, is starting to heat up. What's lighting this issue on fire, I guess.
Yeah, well, it seemed like the too big to fail issue had been placed on the back burner for a little while, and it looks like whether it was politically convenient or not, the Goldman issue has brought back too big to fail in terms of the Senate and Congress really debating this issue. And so, there was a good article in the New York Times today that was kind of summarizing what's going on down in D.C. And one of the issues was, how big is too big is too big. And there's a professor up at MIT, Simon Johnson, who says, 4% of GDP of a commercial bank, 2% of GDP of an investment bank, that should be the cutoff.
What are the sizes of the largest banks now? Are they?
Yeah, that's what
4
kind
or
of
6%.
Well, that's yeah. That drew my eye to go doing a quick check on their assets to see how big they were, because it sounded big to me, like 4% of GDP.
That sounds pretty big.
Yeah, it sounds big. So yeah, Bank of America is at the top. They're 16% of GDP.
Oh, so bringing them down to 6% is a significant
a significant cut.
That's what you got to drop them by 2/3, basically.
Yeah, exactly. They're at 2.2 trillion in assets. J.P. Morgan is right behind them at like 14% of GDP, and then Wells Fargo, Citi, Goldman. They're all above the recommended limits of Simon Johnson. Now, how qualified he is to say what is too big to fail is another question, but it was just the number itself, that they are a significant percentage of GDP of the country, was pretty striking. So
why do these banks have, besides, bigger is better, why do these banks have such huge balance sheets?
As you mentioned, they, clearly some of the mergers over the last few years has made them bigger, and the problem there is that, hey, if we were willing to bail them out when they were smaller, well, now we're even more, as taxpayers, even more incentivized to bail them out. So there's the whole moral hazard.
And there's this fight about trying to fund basically an FDIC for these larger organizations with $50 billion, and
right.
The banks don't want it. The government's looking for it. The Republicans have been against it, but now at the Goldman issue, it looks like it's very difficult for the Republicans to stand in the way.
Yeah, and I think that because they've pushed back on the bailout fund, now that's given some of the more I guess reformist senators and legislators to push even further, to say, hey, forget about the bailout fund. Yeah, you didn't like that? Good. We don't like it either. What we actually want to do is break them up. So by opposing what was a relatively modest proposal in the bailout fund, has now led to and even more radical proposals probably taking on a greater chance of being passed.
And to a certain extent, actually, I've been on record saying that that to a certain extent, do we really want these organizations in the over-the-counter markets and really taking significant risk with taxpayer backstops as well as depositor backstops. And I'm kind of for moving in this direction if we want to keep on moving in this direction. I'm sure I'm going to anger a bunch of people by saying that, but I think that was one of the issues, that the Volcker rule didn't go far enough.
Well, and I think the point is that I think the advocates for breaking the banks up is when even if you had the bailout fund, if the systemic risk was that large, we're going to bail them out.
Yeah,
right?
we bailed out the banks. What was the bailout? $750 billion. So $50 billion is a drop in the bucket compared to $750 billion.
Yeah, exactly.
So a $50 billion bailout fund really wouldn't go that far.
And I think that the issue though that is critical to the debate of breaking them up is, what that happens to the global banks, right? I mean, on the other, on the one
So all
hand,
of a sudden, if if Bank of America is 16% of GDP, and you break it up into I don't know what 5 little banks or 3 little banks,
right?
What's going to happen to the the UBSs and the Deutsche Banks of the world?
Yeah, exactly. So it has to be part of a broader, global response to the issue. Because, I mean, from a taxpayer perspective, we don't have to bail out Deutsche Bank. We don't have to bail out Credit Suisse or UBS. So if they fail, that's on their home country's
Balance sheet.
On their home country's balance sheet. But on the other hand, that risk left, or that freedom that they're accorded left unchecked, could hurt the competitiveness of the banks here.
So whatever we really need to do, we need to do it, globally, across all different geographies.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, with that, I think we're out of time. I'm here with Adam Sussman, Director of Research at TABB Group. Me, Larry TABB, founder and CEO of TABB Group. Until next time, thanks.